Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into what is arguably the most famous assassination in human history. But look, we aren't just going to treat this like some classic, dusty tragedy. Instead, we're breaking it down as a highly calculated, though absolutely flawed, political maneuver. The fall of Julius Caesar actually gives us an incredible masterclass in political motives, the brutal realities of regime change, and the terrifying power of controlling the narrative in the immediate aftermath of a crisis.
Okay, let's dive into this right at the bloody climax. Speak, hands, for me. Those are the frantic words of Casca, right as he strikes the very first blow on the Senate floor. This wasn't some quiet, secretive poisoning in the dark. This was a highly public, intensely violent transition of power right in the political heart of Rome. The conspirators surround Caesar under the guise of an ordinary political petition, and in a matter of seconds, the most powerful leader of the Roman world is bleeding to death at their feet.
What's truly fascinating here is the sheer whiplash of these few moments. Literally seconds before his death, Caesar's massive ego is on full display. He compares himself to the Northern Star, claiming he is constant, unmovable, and practically a god among men who simply cannot be swayed. And then, the absolute second Caesar falls, the conspirators immediately pivot to damage control. Cinna shouts out, "Liberty! Freedom! Tyranny is dead!" It's this desperate, instantaneous framing of a cold-blooded murder as a glorious act of liberation.
So let's break down their deeply twisted logic, and honestly, their absolutely terrible PR strategy. First off, Brutus literally claims they did Caesar a favor by cutting off his years of fearing death. Yeah, as if murder is some grand benefit. Then, they decide the best way to look like peaceful liberators is to stoop down, bathe their hands and swords in Caesar's blood all the way up to their elbows, walk directly into the public marketplace, waving these dripping red weapons, and shout about peace and freedom. I mean, it is a grotesque attempt to turn a gruesome slaughter into a symbol of civic peace.
And this whole scene brilliantly illustrates their true mindset, as they are literally washing their hands in the blood of their leader. Cassius says, "How many ages hence shall this our lofty scene be acted over in states unborn and accents yet unknown?" Think about that. They aren't just thinking about the immediate stability of Rome. They're completely obsessed with their historical legacy. Brutus and Cassius view themselves as timeless, mythic heroes acting out a lofty scene for future generations. It's a classic case of leaders being so obsessed with how history will see them that they completely lose touch with the actual people standing right outside their doors.
Well, that brings us to the absolute turning point of this entire political crisis, the entrance of Mark Antony's servant. So the conspirators have the body, they've got the weapons, and they think they're in total control of the state. But Mark Antony is Caesar's closest and most capable ally, and he's definitely not about to blindly walk into a room full of heavily armed murderers. Instead, he smartly sends a servant first to test these deadly political waters and see if he can even survive a conversation with them. Notice how Antony builds this masterful counter-maneuver. Step 1, his servant drops to his knees and just instantly flatters Brutus, calling him noble, wise, and valiant. Step 2, the servant humbly asks for safe passage, claiming Antony simply wants to understand the motives behind why Caesar had to die. Step 3, he pledges Antony's loyalty to Brutus's future endeavors. It's brilliant. Antony actively uses his servant to exploit Brutus's inflated sense of honor. He completely disarms the assassins with sweet words and submission before he even steps foot into the capital.
And guess what? This strategy works perfectly on Brutus, but definitely not on Cassius. Right away, we see Brutus's naive political idealism. He instantly falls for the flattery and trusts Antony, declaring, "I know that we shall have him well to friend." But contrast that with Cassius's sharp, pragmatic political instinct. He issues a really severe warning, "I have a mind that fears him much." Cassius understands the mechanics of power. He knows that in a political coup, you don't just leave the former dictator's fiercely loyal right-hand man walking around freely with a smile. So, the really crucial point is what happens next. Antony arrives, looks down at Caesar's slaughtered body, and then does something incredibly tense and psychologically brilliant. He looks at the assassins and says, "Let each man render me his bloody hand." He physically walks up to every single conspirator, Brutus, Cassius, Decius, Casca, and shakes their blood-soaked hands. On the surface, sure, he's making peace and signaling complete submission to the new regime. But beneath the surface, he is entirely securing his own survival. He's buying crucial time among a group of men who could turn their swords on him at any second. Which leads us to a massive, truly pivotal question.
Why on earth does Brutus allow Mark Antony to speak at Caesar's funeral? I mean, the assassins have won. They have total control of the government. So why hand a public microphone to Caesar's most fiercely loyal friend? This single decision is going to become Brutus's most fatal miscalculation of the entire coup.
To understand why, we've got to look at the warring logic within the conspiracy itself. See, Brutus genuinely believes that allowing Antony to speak will make the conspirators look reasonable, fair, and democratic. He says it shall advantage more than do us wrong. He honestly thinks giving Caesar a proper funeral will calm the terrified public. Cassius, on the other hand, sees the imminent danger. He pulls Brutus aside and explicitly begs him, "You know not what you do. Do not consent." Cassius entirely understands the threat of a charismatic leader manipulating the masses, but Brutus, blinded by his own idealism, completely ignores him.
Now, Brutus does at least try to put some guardrails in place to protect their new government. He imposes very strict rules for Antony's speech. 1. Antony cannot blame the conspirators for the murder. 2. He can speak all the good he wants of Caesar. 3. He must explicitly tell the crowd he is speaking solely by the conspirators' permission. And 4. He has to speak from the exact same pulpit, only after Brutus has already presented the official state narrative. Brutus honestly thinks these rules will tightly control the narrative, but he is completely, disastrously wrong.
And how do we know for sure he's wrong? Because of what happens the absolute second the conspirators leave the room. Left entirely alone with Caesar's corpse, Antony drops his facade of friendship in an instant. He cries out, "Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers." He isn't their friend. He views them as butchers, and his public submission just moments before was literally nothing but a calculated, tactical delay to ensure he lived long enough to strike back.
Let's track exactly how quickly Antony pivots from playing a grieving, submissive friend to a strategic mastermind plotting to seize control of Rome. First, he shakes the assassin's hands just to stay alive. Second, he secures permission for the funeral speech, which, as we know, will become his ultimate weapon. Third, he plans to use that public oration to obliterate his enemies. By outwardly playing by Brutus's rules, he's going to secretly use biting irony and the shocking public display of Caesar's mutilated body to completely turn the Roman citizens against the assassins. And fourth, he intercepts a messenger and orders him to tell young Octavius, Caesar's heir, to stay out of Rome until Antony knows exactly how the crowd reacts. He is literally organizing a counter-coup in real time.
And you know, Antony's ultimate goal here isn't just political survival, it is utter devastation. In this terrifying crescendo of emotion while standing over the body, Antony prophesies that Caesar's vengeful spirit will cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Antony fully intends to use the very chaos that the conspirators created directly against them. He is actively planning to manipulate the public at the upcoming funeral to launch a brutal, bloody civil war that will tear the nation apart to avenge his fallen leader.
So here we are at the end of this anatomy of a coup, leaving us with a really profound question to consider. Does true political power belong to the idealist who strikes the physical blow, like Brutus, or does it belong to the pragmatist who survives and controls the narrative, like Mark Antony? The conspirators undoubtedly won the physical battle on the Senate floor, but as Antony steps up to that pulpit, he is about to completely win the war of words. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this breakdown illuminated the brilliant cutthroat mechanics of this historical moment for you and leaves you eager to explore what happens next.